Victoria Blackwell's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard that refused to light up. In 6 hours, she'd lose everything: her company, her father's legacy, the respect she'd fought 15 years to earn. The Porsche that never failed her had died in a mechanic's parking lot, and the man sliding out from under a truck looked like he couldn't fix a bicycle. But when he met her eyes and said, "Someone tried to kill you," everything she thought she knew about strength, survival, and second chances shattered. This wasn't about a car anymore. Comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Victoria's story travels. The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Victoria Blackwell couldn't taste it anyway. She'd lost that ability somewhere around her 35th birthday, the same year she'd stopped crying, stopped hoping, stopped feeling much of anything except the constant hum of ambition that kept her heart beating. The boardroom had emptied 20 minutes earlier, her executives scattering like startled birds after she'd dismantled their quarterly projections with surgical precision, and now she sat alone in her corner office, 43 floors above Seattle, watching the city lights blur into nothing. Her phone buzzed. Richard Cross, her COO. She ignored it. He'd been circling for months, whispering to board members, planting seeds of doubt about her leadership. Too aggressive, too controlling, too much like her father, and look how that ended. Victoria closed her eyes and saw her father's face, stern, disappointed, even in death. Especially in death. "Miss Blackwell." Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your car is ready downstairs." "Thank you, Jennifer." Professional, distant, the only way she knew how to be. She gathered her briefcase, her coat the armor she wore every day. Tomorrow's board meeting would decide everything. Either they'd approve her expansion plan, $50 million into emerging markets, or they'd vote her out and install Richard in her place. 15 years of clawing her way up from the daughter to the CEO would evaporate like morning fog. The elevator descent felt longer than usual, or maybe time just moved differently when you were counting the hours until your execution. 43 floors, to think about everything she'd sacrificed. Her 20s spent in boardrooms instead of building relationships. Her 30s married to quarterly reports instead of the man who'd proposed, and then left when he realized she'd never choose him over the company. Her early 40s alone except for the employees who feared her, and the board members who wanted her gone. The parking garage smelled like concrete and exhaust and failure. Her Porsche 911 GT3 RS sat in its reserved spot, midnight blue under the fluorescent lights. The one thing in her life that had never disappointed her. $300,000 of German engineering that responded to her touch, obeyed her commands, never questioned her decisions. She slid into the driver's seat, custom leather perfectly molded to her body, and pressed the start button. Nothing. She pressed it again. Still nothing. Not even the dashboard lights flickered to life. No. The word came out strangled, desperate. No, no, no. She tried a third time, a fourth, her finger stabbing at the button, like she could force the car to obey through sheer will. The same will that had conquered boardrooms and closed billion-dollar deals refused to work on 12,000 pounds of metal and electronics. Victoria's hands found the steering wheel and gripped it so hard her knuckles went white. She couldn't breathe. The garage walls pressed inward. The ceiling dropped lower, and somewhere in the back of her throat, a scream built itself out of 15 years of held-back emotions. But she didn't scream. Victoria Blackwell didn't scream. She called people. "Jennifer?" Her voice came out level-controlled. "My car won't start. Who do we use for executive vehicle service?" Prestige Auto Care. They have a contract with the building." "Call them. I need someone here in the next 30 minutes." "Miss Blackwell, it's almost 8 p.m. They close at—" "I don't care what time they close. Offer them double, triple, whatever it takes." An hour later, Victoria sat in her car, still dead still, mocking her, while a mechanic from Prestige shook his head and delivered the verdict she'd been dreading. "ECU's fried. Completely dead. We'll need to order a new one, Reprogram it could take 4, maybe 5 days. I don't have 5 days. I have 6 hours. Ma'am, there's no way. Then find someone who can. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Jennifer, I need every auto repair shop within 20 miles that works on high-performance imports. Now. 10 phone calls later, Victoria had been laughed at, twice told, maybe next week, 5 times, and hung up on 3 times. The last shop, someplace called Morrison's Auto Repair, in a neighborhood she'd never heard of, didn't even answer. She called again, and again. On the 4th ring, a child picked up. Morrison's Auto, this is Emma. Victoria's brain stuttered. I need to speak to the owner. Dad's under a truck right now. Can I take a message? Tell him. Victoria stopped, regrouped. Tell him I have a Porsche 911 GT3 RS with a dead ECU, and I need it fixed by tomorrow morning. Tell him I'll pay whatever he wants. Okay, but Dad doesn't really care about money. He cares about if he can actually fix it. The honesty in the child's voice was so foreign to Victoria's world that she almost laughed. Can I speak to him, please? Hold on. Muffled sounds. Footsteps. A man's voice in the background, rough and tired. I told you no personal calls during business hours. It's not personal, Dad. It's a lady with a really expensive car. More muffled conversation. Then the phone picked up again, and a male voice said, This is Jake Morrison. Mr. Morrison, my name is Victoria Blackwell. I'm the CEO of Blackwell Automotive, and I have a crisis. My Porsche's computer is dead. I have the most important meeting of my life tomorrow at 6 a.m. and I've called every shop in Seattle. You're my last option. Silence on the other end. Then, what year? What? What year is the Porsche? 2024. GT3 RS. Custom build. And the ECU just died. No warning lights. No performance issues before. Nothing. It was fine when I parked this morning. That's not how ECUs fail, Miss Blackwell. They give warning signs. Days, sometimes weeks of diagnostic codes, performance degradation. Well, this one didn't. So can you fix it or not? Another pause. Victoria heard background noise, tools clanging, someone welding, the sounds of actual work being done. Where are you now? My office parking garage, downtown. I can come look at it, but I'm not making any promises. If the ECU's dead, we're talking about sourcing parts that might not be available. Reprogramming that requires factory software I might not have access to. Mr. Morrison. Victoria's voice dropped into the register that made junior executives stutter. I'm not interested in excuses or explanations. I'm interested in results. Come look at my car. If you can fix it, name your price. If you can't, at least I'll know I tried everything. Give me the address. She did, then hung up and sat in her dead Porsche waiting for a mechanic she'd never met from a shop she'd never heard of, betting her entire career on a stranger who cared more about whether he could fix something than how much he'd be paid for it. Her phone buzzed. Richard Cross again. This time she answered. Victoria, just checking in before tomorrow's meeting. You're still planning to present the expansion plan? Of course. Good, good. I know some board members have concerns, but I'm sure you'll address them. You always do. His voice carried false warmth like oil floating on water. By the way, I heard your car had some trouble tonight. Victoria's blood went cold. How did you know that? Jennifer mentioned it when I called earlier. I hope it's nothing serious. You know how important tomorrow is. It's handled. Of course it is. You always handle everything, don't you? That's what I admire about you, Victoria. Your refusal to ask for help, even when you should. He paused just long enough for the words to sink in. See you tomorrow. The call ended, and Victoria sat in the silence, her mind racing. Richard knew about the car. He'd called it trouble before she'd told him what kind of trouble. And that pause, that deliberate pause before, even when you should, it felt like a threat wrapped in concern. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This is Victoria. Miss Blackwell, Jake Morrison. I'm pulling into your garage now. Black Ford F-150. Where are you parked? Level P3 Executive Section, Space 301. 3 minutes later, a truck that had seen better years rumbled up to her Porsche. The contrast was almost funny. Her car probably cost more than his truck's entire Blue Book value times 10. A man climbed out mid-40s wearing jeans and a work shirt with Morrison's stitched across the chest. Grease stained his hands. His boots had seen a decade of hard use, and he moved with the economical grace of someone who'd learned that wasted motion meant wasted time. Behind him, a girl, the daughter Emma, bounced out of the passenger seat. Maybe 10 years old, ponytail, curious eyes. "You brought your child to a parking garage at 9 p.m., Victoria asked before she could stop herself. "School break. Mrs. Rodriguez couldn't watch her tonight." Jake's voice held no apology. "Emma, stay by the truck." "Can I bring your tools?" "Not yet." He approached the Porsche like a doctor examining a patient, circling it slowly, eyes scanning every detail. Then he crouched by the driver's door and held out his hand. "Keys." Victoria handed them over, and something about the gesture felt oddly intimate, trusting this stranger with access to the one thing in her life that had never failed her. Jake slid into the driver's seat, his frame too big for the space designed for her smaller build, and pressed the start button. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he popped the hood, got out, and spent 5 minutes just staring at the engine bay, occasionally reaching in to touch a wire, check a connection. Victoria stood beside him, arms crossed, watching. "Well?" "Give me a minute." "I don't have a minute. I have 5 hours until I need to be in a hotel room trying to sleep before the most important day of my career." He didn't look up. "Then you should probably head to that hotel because this is going to take longer than a minute." "Excuse me." Now he looked at her, and his eyes, dark, tired, but somehow kind, held hers without flinching. "Miss Blackwell, I could rush this. I could poke around, make guesses, maybe get lucky. Or I could do it right. Which do you want?" "I want my car fixed." "Then let me work." He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and bent back into the engine bay. Victoria stood there useless while this mechanic did things she didn't understand with her car that represented everything she'd built. Emma appeared at her elbow, offering a bottle of water. "Dad says most people get dehydrated when they're stressed. You look stressed." "I'm fine." "That's what Dad says too, but Mrs. Rodriguez says men and women who say they're fine are usually the least fine people." Emma tilted her head, studying Victoria with the brutal honesty only children possessed. "Are you rich?" "Emma." Jake's voice carried a warning from under the hood. "What I'm just asking. The car's really expensive and her watch probably costs more than our house." Victoria looked down at her Patek Philippe. The girl wasn't wrong. "Yes. I'm rich." "Does it make you happy?" The question landed like a punch to the chest. That's not really how it works." "So no, Emma Tools." Jake's hand emerged from the engine bay, palm up. "The multimeter." The girl ran to the truck and returned with a yellow device Victoria didn't recognize. Jake took it, plugged leads into various connections, studied the readout. His face changed, jaw-tightening, eyes narrowing. "What?" Victoria demanded. "What is it?" "Your ECU's fried like the other mechanic said, but it didn't fail naturally." "What does that mean?" Jake straightened, holding up his multimeter. "This reads voltage. Your battery should show 12.6 volts at rest, maybe 14.5 when charging. I'm reading 15.2 volts in several circuits. That's way too high." "In English, please." "Someone overcharged your battery system, deliberately. The voltage spike fried your ECU and probably damaged other components too." He met her eyes. "Miss Blackwell, this wasn't a malfunction. This was sabotage." The parking garage tilted sideways. Victoria's hand found the Porsche's hood to steady herself. "That's impossible." "I'm looking at the evidence. Someone with knowledge of automotive electrical systems deliberately damaged your car. Who would? But she knew. The phone call from Richard. His comment about her car trouble before she'd told him the details. His suggestion that she should ask for help. Oh God. You know who did this. I don't know. I can't prove anything. Victoria's mind raced connecting dots she'd been too busy to see. My COO. He wants my job. Tomorrow's board meeting could give it to him. If I don't show up, you lose everything. Yes. Jake looked at his daughter, then back at Victoria. I can fix this. You said it would take days. It will take me until 5 a.m. if I work straight through without sleep. I'll need to source an ECU from a Porsche in a junkyard reprogram it, install it, test every electrical circuit. It's going to be close. Why would you do that? Work all night for someone you don't know. He studied her face, and Victoria felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the fluorescent lights. Because somebody tried to hurt you, and I really don't like bullies. Also, Yeah, Dad. Remember that lesson about standing up for people, even when it's hard? Yeah. This is one of those times. Emma nodded solemnly, like her father had just explained quantum physics instead of basic human decency. Victoria's throat tightened. I'll pay you $10,000. Cash. Tonight. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. Not everyone. Jake pulled out his phone, started scrolling through contacts. I want something else. Name it. When I fix your car when you walk into that boardroom tomorrow and show your COO that he didn't win that sabotage, doesn't beat skill and determination. I want you to remember something. What? That the guy who saved your career was a mechanic you'd never met. That intelligence and worth don't come from titles or bank accounts. That sometimes the people you overlook are the ones who'll show up for you when everyone else is trying to tear you down. Victoria stared at him. In 15 years of cutthroat business, no one had ever asked her for something that simple and that profound. Deal. Her voice cracked. But I still want to pay you. We'll figure that out after. Right now, I need to make some calls, wake up some people who won't be happy about it, and turn your car into my top priority. He looked at Emma. You good to help? I'm always good to help. That's my girl. Miss Blackwell, you should go home, get some rest. I'll call you when it's done. I'm staying. Ma'am, it's my car, my career, my life. Someone just tried to sabotage. I'm not going anywhere. Jake studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But you're going to be bored. Most of fixing things is just patience and repetition. I'll manage. What Victoria couldn't say, was that she hadn't felt this alive in years. Standing in a parking garage at 9:30 on a Tuesday night watching a mechanic and his daughter prepare to save her entire world, she felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen so long she'd forgotten it existed. Hope. Jake made his calls, parts suppliers, other mechanics people who owed him favors. His voice stayed calm, professional, never pleading, just stating facts and asking for help. Within 20 minutes, he had an ECU being pulled from a wrecked Porsche in Tacoma, a diagnostic computer borrowed from a shop in Kent, and 3 other mechanics who promised to owe him big time after this. Emma set up a portable work light. Victoria offered her corporate credit card for the parts Jake refused. She offered to order food he accepted, but insisted on pizza from a specific place in his neighborhood, not from any expensive downtown restaurant. She offered to call her building security to give them access to better lighting. He pointed out that his portable setup was better than anything the building had. At 10 p.m., Jake's friend arrived with the ECU. They spent 30 minutes in hushed consultation, pointing at diagrams on Jake's phone, discussing things Victoria couldn't follow, ignition timing maps, and fuel injection protocols, and CAN bus architecture. At 11 p.m., Victoria's phone rang. Richard Cross. She let it go to voicemail. At midnight, Emma fell asleep in the truck's passenger seat, and Jake covered her with a blanket before returning to work. The tenderness in that gesture made Victoria's eyes sting. At 1 a.m., Jake emerged from under the hood grease up to his elbows, exhaustion written in every line of his face, and said, "I need to test something." He got in the driver's seat and pressed the start button. The engine roared to life, that glorious sound Victoria had heard 1,000 times but never appreciated until now. The dashboard lit up like Christmas, every system responding, every circuit flowing with power. Jake let it run for 30 seconds, then turned it off. "ECU's in, programmed. But I need to trace every electrical system, make sure nothing else was damaged. That's going to take another 3 hours minimum." "It's running. I could drive it now." "You could drive it into a wall if the steering assistance fails, or into traffic if the brake system's been compromised. You want to risk your life or just your career?" Victoria thought about Richard's phone call about someone deliberate enough to sabotage her car in a secured parking garage. No, do it right. Smart choice. At 2 a.m., Victoria dozed off in her car's passenger seat and dreamed of her father's funeral. The board members circling her like sharks, their condolences hiding calculations about how quickly they could replace her. She woke with a gasp, disoriented, and found Jake watching her from under the hood. Bad dream. Old dream. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Fair enough. He went back to work, and Victoria watched his hands scarred, calloused, impossibly skilled trace wires through the engine bay, with surgeon's precision. Every movement deliberate. Every test methodical. No shortcuts. No guesses. Just competence built over years of learning how things break and how to fix them. "Mr. Morrison." "Jake." "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Why do you do this, fix cars in a small shop, when you clearly have skills that could earn you more money somewhere else?" His hands paused. "You ever have something you're good at that doesn't make you happy?" "My entire career." "Yeah, I used to design guidance systems for aerospace. Satellites, missiles, things that go into orbit. Good money, great benefits, impressive title." He resumed testing connections. "Then my wife got cancer, stage 4, 9 months from diagnosis to funeral, and I realized I'd spent years launching things into space when I should have been launching my daughter's dreams." Victoria's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Me too. But after Sarah died, I looked at Emma and thought about what kind of father I wanted to be. The kind who works 80-hour weeks on projects that don't matter, or the kind who shows up for school plays and teaches her how to fix things when they break." He glanced up. "Turns out fixing cars pays enough to keep us fed and gives me enough time to actually raise my daughter. So here I am. Do you ever regret it? Giving up that career?" "Every time I pay bills." He smiled, tired but genuine. "But not when Emma shows me a perfect score on her math test, or when she figures out a problem I'm working on, or when she tells me I'm the best dad in the world. Those moments worth more than any satellite I ever launched." Victoria thought about her own choices, the relationships sacrificed, the experiences missed, the life unlived in pursuit of success that felt increasingly hollow. "I don't have moments like that." "You could." "It's too late. I'm 43. I've built this life, this career. I can't just—" "Miss Blackwell." Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm 45. I rebuilt my entire life at 42. It's never too late to choose different." Before Victoria could respond, Emma stirred in the truck, then climbed out, rubbing her eyes. "Dad." "How much longer?" "Hour, maybe 2. Go back to sleep, baby." "Can't. I'm hungry." Jake checked his watch. "Pizza place is closed. I can—" "There's a diner 2 blocks from here," Victoria offered. "Opens at 4. We could walk there, get breakfast." "Miss Blackwell, you should rest." "I'm not sleeping anyway, and I haven't been to a diner in 15 years. I think I'm due." So at 3:45 a.m., Victoria Blackwell, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, walked to an all-night diner with a mechanic and his 10-year-old daughter. They sat in a cracked vinyl booth, ordered coffee that tasted like regret, and pancakes that tasted like childhood, and talked about things that had nothing to do with business. Emma explained her science fair project, something about renewable energy, that went over Victoria's head. Jake told a story about a customer who'd tried to fix his own transmission with YouTube videos and made everything worse. Victoria found herself laughing, actually laughing for the first time in months. "What about you?" Emma asked, drowning her pancakes in syrup. "What do you do?" "I run a company." "What kind of company?" "We make parts for cars. Engines, transmissions, electrical systems." Emma's eyes lit up. "Like the ECU Dad's replacing?" "Exactly like that." "That's so cool. Do you know how they work?" Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. She'd approved budgets for ECU development, reviewed technical specifications, signed off on manufacturing contracts. But did she actually know how they worked? "Not really. I know what they do, but not how." "Dad could teach you. He's really good at explaining complicated stuff." Jake smiled into his coffee. "I don't think Miss Blackwell needs automotive lessons." "Why not?" "She's got an automotive company. Shouldn't she know how stuff works?" The logic was so simple and devastating that Victoria couldn't argue. "You're right. I should know." They finished breakfast as dawn started painting the sky gray-pink. Jake paid the bill over Victoria's protests, and they walked back to the parking garage in companionable silence. The city was waking up, delivery trucks, early commuters, the daily machinery of commerce, grinding into motion. Victoria's phone buzzed. 5 a.m. 1 hour until she needed to be in the boardroom. Jake was under the hood when they returned, running final tests. The multimeter beeped, connections clicked, and finally he straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that made them worse instead of better. "Start it up." Victoria got behind the wheel and pressed the button. The Porsche purred to life, perfect, responsive, alive. Every dashboard light came on exactly as it should. Every system responded. It felt like coming home after a long, terrible journey. Jake leaned in the window. "All electrical systems tested and certified. You're good to go." "How much?" "We talked about this." "Jake, you worked all night. You called in favors. I did what needed doing. You can pay for the parts. That's $600. Everything else." He shrugged. "Consider it an investment in making sure good people don't lose to bad people." Victoria pulled out her checkbook, wrote a check for $20,000, and handed it to him before he could protest. $600 for parts. The rest is for your daughter's college fund, non-negotiable. Miss Blackwell. Victoria. "And I mean it, Jake. You gave me back more than my car tonight. The least I can do is make sure Emma has every opportunity my money can buy." He looked at the check, then at his daughter, then back at Victoria. "Thank you." "Thank you." Victoria started to back out, then stopped. "Jake, that thing you wanted me to remember. Yeah. I won't forget. Ever." She drove out of this parking garage as the sun finally broke over Seattle's skyline, and for the first time in 15 years, Victoria Blackwell believed that maybe, just maybe, there were still people in the world worth trusting. Her phone rang. Richard Cross. This time she answered. "Good morning, Richard." "Victoria, I've been trying to reach you all night. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. See you in 45 minutes." She hung up before he could respond and smiled. The board meeting started at 6 a.m. sharp. Victoria walked into the conference room with 3 minutes to spare, carrying her presentation materials and a confidence she hadn't felt in months. Richard sat at the far end of the table, surrounded by his allies and his face. When he saw her, the flicker of shock, quickly masked by false warmth, told her everything she needed to know. He'd expected her to fail. Expected her to miss this meeting. Expected his sabotage to work. "Victoria, wonderful to see you. I trust everything's well with your vehicle?" "Fixed. Thank you for your concern." "Oh, I'm surprised. Jennifer said it was quite serious. It was. Fortunately, I found someone skilled enough to handle it. Victoria set up her laptop connected to the projector. Shall we begin? The presentation lasted 90 minutes. Victoria walked the board through every detail of her expansion plan: market analysis, risk assessment, projected returns. She answered every question, addressed every concern, dismantled every objection with facts and data and unshakable preparation. Richard tried to interrupt 3 times. Each time, Victoria cut him off with polite professionalism that barely concealed steel. At 7:30, the board chair called for a vote. 8 hands went up. Motion carries unanimously. The expansion is approved. Victoria looked at Richard and smiled. Thank you for your support. His face could have cut glass. The meeting ended, and Victoria gathered her materials riding the adrenaline high of victory. She'd done it, survived the night, won the day. Proved that sabotage didn't beat skill and preparation. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hope your meeting went well. Jake. Victoria smiled and typed back, better than well, thank you again. His response came immediately. Emma wants to know if you'll come to her science fair next Tuesday. She says you need to learn how things work. Victoria looked at her calendar. She had 3 meetings scheduled that afternoon. All of them suddenly felt less important than a 10-year-old science fair. I'll be there. Victoria stood in the hallway outside the boardroom, her hands trembling so badly she had to clasp them together. The victory should have felt sweeter. The board's unanimous approval should have filled the hollow spaces inside her chest. Instead, she kept seeing Richard's face, that flash of rage, before he'd smoothed it into congratulations the way his eyes had promised. This wasn't over. Her phone rang. Jake. Hey, just wanted to make sure you survived. I survived. More than survived. They approved everything. That's great. Really great. A pause. You okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just tired. The lie tasted bitter. Listen about Tuesday. Emma's going to be so excited you're coming. Fair warning, her project involves a lot of magnets, and she will talk your ear off about electromagnetic fields. Victoria laughed, and it sounded almost real. I'll prepare myself. Jake, I should go. I have... Victoria. His voice dropped serious. Whoever sabotaged your car, they're not going to stop just because it didn't work. You need to be careful. I'm always careful. No, you're always controlled. That's different. Careful means watching your back. Controlled means pretending you don't need to. The words hit harder than they should have. I'll be fine. Will you? Because from where I'm standing, you just embarrassed someone powerful who already tried to hurt you once. That doesn't end well. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you stop treating this like a business problem and start treating it like someone wants you gone, permanently. Victoria's stomach churned. You think Richard would actually... I don't know Richard, but I know sabotage. And I know that people who are willing to risk federal charges to take out a car usually have bigger plans if the car doesn't work. Before Victoria could respond, Jennifer appeared at the end of the hallway, slightly out of breath. Miss Blackwell, Mr. Cross wants to see you in his office. Every instinct screamed danger. Tell him I'm busy. He said it was urgent, about the expansion approval. Victoria looked at her phone at Jake's name still on the screen. I have to go. Nay. Victoria, wait. She hung up and followed Jennifer down the hall, each step feeling like walking toward an execution. Richard's office occupied the corner opposite hers. Same view, same luxury, but his space felt colder, somehow more calculated. He stood by the windows, hands clasped behind his back, the picture of executive composure. Victoria, congratulations on the board approval. Thank you. He turned, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. I have to admit, I'm impressed. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure. Car trouble, last-minute panic, yet you showed up perfectly prepared. How did you manage it? I found a good mechanic. Ah yes, Morrison's Auto Repair. Small shop in West Seattle. Interesting choice for someone with your resources. Richard moved to his desk, picked up a file. I took the liberty of looking into them. Jacob Morrison, 45, former aerospace engineer, widowed, one daughter. Quite the fall from satellites to transmissions. Victoria's blood went cold. Why are you investigating my mechanic? I investigate everyone who enters your orbit, Victoria. It's my job as COO to protect this company's interests. And when our CEO starts consorting with strangers in parking garages at odd hours. He shrugged. It raises questions. Consorting. He fixed my car. All night, alone, with his young daughter present. Some might find that inappropriate. Are you actually threatening me with gossip, Richard? That's beneath even you. His smile widened. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply noting that your judgment has been questionable lately. The aggressive expansion, the risky market moves. Now this business with the mechanic. The board may have approved your plan today, but they're watching. One mistake, one scandal, and that approval evaporates. Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to ice. You sabotaged my car. That's a serious accusation. You knew it wouldn't start. You called it car trouble before I told you what kind of trouble. You wanted me to miss the meeting. Richard's expression didn't change. I heard about your vehicle from Jennifer, as I mentioned. As for missing the meeting, Victoria, you're exhausted. Paranoid. Perhaps you should take some time off. Let me handle things while you rest. I'm not going anywhere. Then be careful. He returned to the window, dismissing her. This company has a way of eating people who can't keep up. I'd hate to see you become another casualty of ambition. Victoria left his office feeling sick. She made it to her own space, closed the door, and leaned against it until her breathing steadied. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jake. You okay? She typed back. Can we talk not about cars? My shop. Anytime. Victoria looked at her calendar meetings, stacked until 7 p.m. dinner, with investors at 8 conference calls with Tokyo at midnight. The kind of schedule she'd maintained for 15 years without question. The kind of schedule that suddenly felt like a cage. She buzzed Jennifer. Cancel everything today. Personal emergency. Miss Blackwell, the investors are flying in specifically for... Richard can handle it. He's been dying for the opportunity. Victoria grabbed her coat. I'll be back tomorrow. She drove to West Seattle in a daze, her Porsche handling perfectly every system Jake had repaired, working exactly as it should. The neighborhood surprised her, not the rundown area she'd imagined, but tree-lined streets with modest homes, kids playing in yards, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors' names. Morrison's Auto Repair sat between a coffee shop and a Vietnamese restaurant, a brick building that had probably been there since the 50s. The bay doors stood open, revealing 3 cars in various states of repair. Jake worked under a Honda, only his legs visible, while Emma sat at a desk doing homework. Miss Blackwell. Emma jumped up, grinning. You came? I did. Is your father? Dad, Victoria's here. Jake slid out from under the Honda grease, streaking his face, surprise evident in his eyes. Everything okay? No, yes, I don't know. Victoria heard how crazy she sounded. You said to be careful. You were right. Richard knows about you about last night. He's threatening to... I don't even know what he's threatening, but it's something. Jake stood wiping his hands. Can you give us a minute? Can I go to Theo's house? His mom said I could come over. Yeah, baby. Be back by 5. Emma grabbed her backpack and ran out, leaving Victoria and Jake alone in the shop. The silence stretched until Victoria couldn't stand it. I shouldn't have come here. You have work. I'm being dramatic. You're being scared. That's different. Jake gestured to a small office in the back. Come on. Talk to me. They sat in the cramped, space-cluttered desk, filing cabinets, a coffee maker that looked older than Emma. Jake poured 2 cups of something that barely qualified as coffee and handed her one. Start from the beginning. So she did. The board meeting victory. Richard's summons. His investigation into Jake's background. The thinly veiled threats about judgment and scandal, and the board's watchful eyes. By the time she finished, Jake's jaw was tight. He's setting you up. For what? I don't know yet. But investigating me, making sure you know he knows about me, that's deliberate. He wants you paranoid, looking over your shoulder, making mistakes. Jake leaned forward. Victoria, has anything else weird happened? Besides the car? She thought about it. My apartment building had a security breach last week. They said it was a false alarm, and someone accessed my office after hours. Monday night security footage showed a maintenance worker, but when I asked about it, building management couldn't find any record of scheduled maintenance. Jesus, you didn't think that was important? I thought it was coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence when someone's trying to take you down. Jake pulled out his phone. I know a guy. Former cop, does private security now. He owes me a favor. Jake, I can't drag you deeper into this. Too late. The second Richard started investigating me, I was already in it. He met her eyes. Besides, you came here for help, so let me help. Victoria's throat tightened. When was the last time someone had offered help without expecting something in return? Why are you doing this? Because you need it. And because Emma would never forgive me if I let something happen to the lady who's coming to her science fair. Despite everything, Victoria smiled. She's something else, your daughter. Yeah, she gets that from her mom. Sarah was... He stopped, cleared his throat. She would have liked you. She always said the most interesting people were the ones who built walls around themselves, because it meant they had something worth protecting inside. Was she right? I don't know yet. Still trying to figure out what you're protecting. Before Victoria could answer, Jake's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Sorry, I need to take this. Customer emergency. He stepped out, leaving Victoria alone in the office. She looked around at the organized chaos: invoices pinned to corkboards, photos of Emma at various ages, a drawing labeled, "My Dad the Best Mechanic," in crayon. This was a life built on different values than hers. Smaller maybe, but somehow fuller. Her own phone buzzed. Email from the board secretary. Emergency meeting called for Thursday 9 a.m. Your attendance required. Victoria's hands went numb. Emergency meetings meant trouble. They meant votes. They meant Richard had made his move. Jake returned, his face grim. That was Frank Peterson, my security guy. He did some digging into your building's maintenance records. And the guy who accessed your office Monday doesn't exist. The credentials were faked. Professional job. Someone who knows how to bypass corporate security systems. So Richard hired someone to break into my office. Why? Looking for something, planting something, could be anything. Jake sat down heavily. Victoria, this is bigger than car sabotage. This is conspiracy breaking and entering identity theft. You need to go to the police. And tell them what my COO might have maybe hired someone who possibly broke into my office. They'll laugh me out of the station. Then we get proof. How? Jake thought for a moment. Your office. Does it have security cameras? Of course. And the footage from Monday night. Building security has it, but they already reviewed it. They said everything looked normal. Because they were looking for an actual crime. But if we review it looking for someone planting bugs or cameras or stealing documents... He leaned forward. You have access to that footage. I'm on the building's board. I can request it. Then do it, tonight. I'll come with you. Bring Frank. We'll go through every second of that footage until we find something. Victoria shook her head. Jake, this isn't your problem. It became my problem when Richard started investigating me, when he dragged my name into whatever game he's playing. His voice softened. And it became my problem when I realized I actually care whether you survive this. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. "Okay." Victoria's voice came out barely a whisper. "Tonight, 9 p.m. I'll meet you at my building. Bring coffee. This is going to take a while." Victoria spent the rest of the afternoon in her car parked by the waterfront, staring at the gray water and trying to remember when her life had become a thriller instead of a career. Her phone buzzed constantly Jennifer, with questions investors needing callbacks. Richard with another suspiciously timed check-in. She ignored all of it. At 8 p.m. she met Jake and Frank Peterson in her building's lobby. Frank looked exactly like a retired cop, mid-50s weathered face, eyes that noticed everything. He shook her hand with the grip of someone who'd spent decades sizing people up. "Miss Blackwell, Jake tells me you have some security concerns." "That's putting it mildly." They took the elevator to the security office where Victoria used her board credentials to access the system. The guard on duty, Tom, she thought his name was, looked confused but compliant. "We need Monday night's footage. All cameras, all floors, but specifically focusing on the executive level between 8 p.m. and midnight." "Everything okay, Miss Blackwell?" "Just being thorough. Board audit procedures." Tom pulled up the files and Victoria, Jake, and Frank crowded around the monitors. The footage showed exactly what building security had reported: a maintenance worker in company uniform entering her office at 9:47 p.m., spending 12 minutes inside, then leaving. Nothing suspicious. "There," Frank pointed. "Pause it." Tom froze the image. The maintenance worker's face was visible, but grainy, the angle wrong for clear identification. "Can you zoom in?" Tom tried, but the resolution degraded into pixels. "What about other cameras, lobby, elevator, parking garage?" They pulled those feeds, tracked the worker's movements backward. He'd entered through the parking garage at 9:30, used an elevator keycard that registered to the maintenance company, gone straight to Victoria's floor. "The keycard," Jake said. "Can you see the number?" Tom enhanced the image. The card's ID was visible. "Run that against your active credentials." Tom typed, waited. His face went pale. "That card was deactivated 3 months ago. It should have been impossible to use." Frank smiled grimly. "Unless someone reactivated it remotely. Someone with administrative access to your security system." "Who has that access?" Victoria asked. "Building management, obviously, and any board member." "How many board members?" 12. Victoria's mind raced. 12 people, any one of whom could have helped Richard. Or maybe Richard had simply paid someone in building management. The possibilities multiplied like fractals. "Keep going," Frank instructed. "Let's see where this guy went after leaving Miss Blackwell's office." They tracked the maintenance worker to the parking garage, watched him get into a black sedan with plates too blurry to read, drive away at 10:18 p.m. Dead end. "Wait." Jake leaned closer to the screen. "Go back to when he's in her office. Can you show the interior camera?" Tom pulled up Victoria's office feed. The worker spent most of his time at her desk, occasionally moving to the filing cabinets, once approaching the bookshelf behind her chair. "What's on that bookshelf?" Jake asked. Victoria tried to remember. Books mostly. Some awards. Family photos. "Photos of who?" "My father. My mother, my college graduation." She paused. "Why?" "Because he spent 3 full minutes examining them. That's not maintenance work. That's intelligence gathering." Frank nodded. "He's building a profile, learning who you care about, what matters to you. Classic setup for a manipulation campaign." "Or blackmail," Jake added quietly. Victoria felt sick. "There's nothing to blackmail me with. My life is an open book, all work, no scandal." "Everyone has secrets, Miss Blackwell. Sometimes we just don't realize which ones matter until someone exploits them." They watched the rest of the footage in silence. The worker left nothing obvious behind, disturbed nothing noticeably, but Victoria now understood that absence of evidence wasn't evidence of absence. He'd been there. He'd invaded her space. And somewhere in those 12 minutes he'd taken or planted something that would come back to haunt her. "We need to sweep your office," Frank said. "Check for bugs, cameras, anything that doesn't belong." "When?" "Now, tonight, before whoever's watching realizes you're looking." They left the security office and took the elevator to the 43rd floor. The executive level was empty, silent, except for the hum of climate control and distant traffic. Victoria unlocked her office, and the familiar space suddenly felt foreign, violated. Frank pulled equipment from a bag, scanners, probes, devices Victoria didn't recognize. He worked methodically, checking outlets, phones, even the underside of her desk. Jake searched the bookshelf, the filing cabinets, anywhere someone might hide something small. "Victoria." Jake's voice was tight. "Come look at this." She joined him at the bookshelf. He'd removed a framed photo of her father, the one from his last board meeting, before he died, stern and proud, and already sick, though none of them knew it yet. Behind the frame, tucked into the backing, was a small black device, no bigger than a quarter. "What is it?" Frank came over, examined it without touching. "Audio recorder, passive, activated by sound. It's been recording every conversation in this office since Monday." Victoria's knees went weak. Every call, every meeting, every private moment she'd thought was safe. "Can you tell who's listening?" "These things upload to a remote server. Could be anyone with the access codes." Frank carefully removed the device, sealed it in an evidence bag. "But this is illegal surveillance, federal crime. You can take this to the FBI." "No." Victoria's voice was flat. "Not yet. If I go to the FBI now, Richard goes underground, covers his tracks, and I still lose everything. I need more than a bug. I need proof he planted it. Proof he sabotaged my car. Proof of conspiracy." "That could take weeks," Frank warned. "Meanwhile, he knows what you know. He's been listening." "Then let him listen." Victoria pulled out her phone. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me." "Okay. Tomorrow call my office, around 10 a.m. Ask me about the expansion deal, specifics, numbers, timelines. I'll give you information that sounds confidential." "Why?" "Because Richard's been listening to everything. If I want him to make a mistake, I need to give him bait he can't resist." Jake and Frank exchanged looks. Finally, Frank nodded. "It could work. Feed him false information, wait for him to act on it, catch him in the act." "It's risky," Jake said. "If he figures out it's a trap..." "Then I'm no worse off than I am now." Victoria looked at the bug in Frank's evidence bag. "He invaded my life, my space, my privacy. I'm done being scared. I'm done being careful. I want him caught, and I want evidence that puts him away." "You're sure about this?" Jake's eyes searched hers. "I've never been more sure of anything." They left the building at midnight, Victoria carrying the bug like it was nuclear material. Frank promised to have it analyzed, see if they could trace the server, identify who had access. Jake walked her to her car, and the parking garage felt different now, not safe, not hers, just another place someone could hurt her. "You're going to be okay," Jake said. "You don't know that." "No. But I'm going to do everything I can to make it true." Victoria looked at this man who'd somehow become essential to her survival in less than 48 hours. "Why do you even care? You barely know me." "I know you showed up at my shop covered in grease and desperation. I know you ate diner pancakes at 4 a.m. with my daughter and didn't complain once. I know you're fighting for something you built against people who want to tear it down." He smiled. "That's enough." "Is it? Emma thinks you're brave, and my daughter's usually right about people." Victoria felt tears threaten and blinked them back hard. "I should go. Tomorrow's going to be..." She didn't have words for what tomorrow would be. "Call me when you get home, just so I know you're safe." "Jake, I'm not your responsibility." "I know. Call me anyway." She did. Pulling into her building's underground garage 20 minutes later, the phone on speaker as she grabbed her briefcase. I'm home. Good. Lock your door. Check your windows. Don't trust anyone. You sound like you're expecting assassins. I'm expecting someone desperate who's already crossed multiple lines. That makes them unpredictable. A pause. Victoria, if this gets too dangerous, if you feel threatened at all, I'll run straight to your shop and hide behind Emma. She's scarier than both of us combined. Jake laughed, and the sound eased something tight in Victoria's chest. She really is. Okay, sleep if you can. I'll call at 10. Thank you for everything. Thank me when this is over. Victoria rode the elevator to her penthouse, checked every lock, every window, then stood in her living room and looked at the city spread out below. Somewhere out there, Richard was planning his next move. Somewhere evidence existed that could save her or destroy her. Somewhere her father's ghost judged every decision she made. But for tonight, she was alive. She was fighting. And she wasn't alone anymore. Her phone buzzed one last time. Text from Emma. Dad says you're in trouble. If you need someone to spy on the bad guys, I'm really good at being quiet. Also, I can bring Mr. Whiskers. He's my cat and he's very intimidating. Victoria smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling and typed back, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Emma. Anytime. Adults are weird, but you're less weird than most. Highest compliment I've received all year. Dad says go to sleep now. He's bossy when he's worried. He's right to be bossy. Good night, Emma. Good night, Victoria. Tomorrow's going to be better. Victoria hoped the child was right. She went to bed still wearing her suit phone clutched in one hand like a lifeline and dreamed of parking garages and bugs and mechanics who showed up when you needed them most. Tomorrow she'd set the trap. Tomorrow the war would begin in earnest. Tonight she just needed to survive until dawn. Dawn came too quickly. Victoria woke at 5:30 to her phone buzzing with emails, each one a small detonation in the careful trap she was setting. The board meeting scheduled for Thursday had been moved up to this afternoon at 2. Richard's doing, obviously. He was accelerating whatever endgame he'd planned, and Victoria had less than 9 hours to be ready. She showered dressed in her armor, the Armani suit that made her feel invincible even when she wasn't, and arrived at the office by 6:45. Jennifer was already there looking frazzled. Miss Blackwell, thank God. Mr. Cross has been asking for you since 6. He says it's urgent. Everything's urgent with Richard. Victoria set down her briefcase deliberately, slow, deliberately calm. Tell him I'll see him at 8. Not before. He said it couldn't wait. Then he can practice patience. I have calls to make. Jennifer hesitated clearly, torn between two executives, then nodded and retreated. Victoria closed her office door, pulled out her personal phone and texted Jake. Meeting moved to 2 p.m. Need the call at 9:30 instead of 10. Can you do it? His response came immediately. Yes, Frank's analyzing the bug now. Found something interesting. Tell me. Not over text. After the call. Victoria's stomach twisted, but she forced herself into CEO mode. She had an hour to prepare to review her notes to make sure every word she said during Jake's call would be convincing enough to fool Richard, but false enough to catch him when he acted on it. At 8 precisely, she walked to Richard's office. He sat behind his desk perfectly composed, except for the tightness around his eyes that said he hadn't slept well either. Victoria, good morning. Richard, you wanted to see me. The board meeting. I assume you've heard it's been moved up. I heard. There are concerns. Several board members have expressed doubts about the expansion timeline, the risk assessment, the allocation of resources. He steepled his fingers. I've tried to defend your proposal, but the questions are legitimate. What questions? Whether you're spreading the company too thin. Whether your judgment is sound, given recent personal issues. He paused. Whether someone else might be better suited to lead this expansion. Someone like you. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Victoria leaned forward. Let me be clear, Richard. Whatever you're planning, whatever play you think you're making, it won't work. I built this company from the ground up after my father died. I've survived hostile takeovers, market crashes, and board revolts. I'll survive you. I'm not trying to destroy you, Victoria. I'm trying to save you from yourself. His voice dripped false concern. You're exhausted, paranoid, making poor decisions. The incident with your car, this obsession with some mechanic now missing meetings yesterday. I didn't miss meetings. I delegated them. To me, last minute, without proper briefing. He shook his head. The board notices these things. They're worried you're losing control. Victoria stood. Tell the board I'll see them at 2, with a presentation that will address every concern and prove exactly who's fit to lead this company. She left before he could respond, her heart hammering. Back in her office, she forced herself to breathe, to think, to plan. Jennifer appeared with coffee she hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. Miss Blackwell, are you all right? You look... I'm fine. Hold all calls until 9:30. There's one I'm expecting, and I need to take it privately. Of course. Should I? That's all. Thank you, Jennifer. The minutes crawled. Victoria reviewed financial reports she'd memorized years ago, projected growth numbers she could recite in her sleep, anything to keep her mind busy. At 9:28, her office phone rang. She let it ring twice before answering. Victoria Blackwell? Miss Blackwell, it's Jake Morrison. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. His voice was different, professional, slightly formal, exactly right for a business call. Victoria activated the speakerphone, knowing the bug would pick up every word. Not at all, Mr. Morrison. What can I do for you? I wanted to follow up on our conversation the other night. You mentioned your company's expansion into emerging markets, and I'm curious about the manufacturing timeline. My shop does some consulting work, and if Blackwell Automotive is looking for quality control specialists. Actually, that's excellent timing. We're finalizing supplier contracts this week. Victoria pulled out the false documents she'd prepared. The main production facility will be in Vietnam, with preliminary operations starting in March. We've allocated $22 million for the initial setup, with equipment orders going through our standard vendor Pacific Manufacturing Supply. Vietnam. That's ambitious. What about tariff concerns? We've structured the deal through a subsidiary in Singapore to minimize tariff impact. The legal team assures me it's completely above board, just creative accounting. She paused. Let that sink in. The board's voting on final approval Thursday, but between you and me, it's essentially a done deal. They talked for another 5 minutes. Victoria layering in details that sounded confidential. Vendor names that didn't exist. Timelines that made no sense. Financial structures that would raise red flags for anyone who knew international manufacturing. Every word was bait carefully crafted to make Richard believe he'd stumbled onto inside information he could use against her. When Jake finally said goodbye and hung up, Victoria sat in silence, staring at the phone. The bug had recorded everything. Richard, or whoever was monitoring the surveillance, now had information suggesting she'd discussed confidential expansion details with an outside consultant, possibly set up illegal tax avoidance schemes, and lied to the board about the deal being essentially done when concerns clearly remained. It was perfect ammunition for someone trying to prove she was unfit to lead. It was also completely fabricated, and the moment Richard acted on it, she'd have proof of his surveillance and conspiracy. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jake. How'd I do? Oscar-worthy. Now we wait. Frank wants to talk to you. Can you meet for lunch? Victoria checked her calendar. She had 3 hours before the board meeting, and nothing scheduled except anxiety. Where? That diner, noon. She arrived at 11:45, found Frank and Jake already in a booth, coffee and tension between them. Frank slid a folder across the table as she sat down. The bug we found in your office. We traced the signal. And it uploads to a private server owned by a company called Sentinel Solutions. They're a corporate intelligence firm, basically legal spies for hire. Very expensive, very discreet, very good at covering their tracks. Victoria's hands went cold. Richard hired corporate spies. Someone did. The account is registered to an LLC that's hidden behind 3 layers of shell companies, but we found something interesting. Frank pulled out a printout. One of those shell companies shares a board member with a firm that Richard Cross invested in 2 years ago. The connection's buried, but it's there. That's not proof he hired them. No, but it's a thread we can pull. Combined with the falsified maintenance credentials, the timing of your car sabotage, and now this fake information you fed him. Frank leaned back. We're building a case. Not enough for prosecution yet, but enough to take to your board with credibility. The board meeting's in 2 hours. Then don't reveal everything. Not yet. Jake's voice was firm. You show them the bug, they'll demand investigations committee's delays. Richard will lawyer up and disappear behind plausible deniability. So what do I do? You wait for him to act on the false information. He heard you talking about Vietnam facilities and Singapore subsidiaries. If he brings that up in the meeting, tries to use it against you, you've got him. Frank tapped the folder. Because we can prove those companies don't exist. Those contracts were never written, and the only way he could know about them is through illegal surveillance. Victoria's mind raced through scenarios, possibilities, risks. What if he doesn't take the bait? What if he's smart enough to verify before using it? He won't verify. He's desperate. Jake's eyes held hers. Desperate people make mistakes. You said so yourself. And if I'm wrong, if this blows up in my face, then you're no worse off than you were yesterday. At least this way you're fighting back. Jake reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. Victoria, you've spent your whole life being careful, being controlled, playing by rules other people made. Maybe it's time to break some rules. She looked at his hand, rough and scarred, and somehow the most reassuring thing in her world right now. I don't know how to do this. Any of this. I'm good at boardrooms and balance sheets, not corporate espionage. You're learning. Fast. Frank smiled grimly. For what it's worth, I've seen politicians and CEOs crumble under less pressure than you're handling. You're tougher than you think. Or more stubborn. Same thing usually. Victoria checked her watch. 1:15. 45 minutes until the meeting that would decide her future. I should go. Prepare. Victoria. Jake's voice stopped her. Whatever happens in there, remember something. What? You're not alone anymore. You've got people in your corner. Use that. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and left the diner feeling both terrified and strangely empowered. The drive back to the office took 15 minutes, each one ticking down like a countdown to detonation. She rode the elevator to the 43rd floor, walked past Jennifer's concerned face, and entered the boardroom at exactly 2 p.m. The 12 board members were already seated, Richard at the far end, looking like a spider in the center of his web. Victoria took her place at the head of the table, opened her laptop and smiled. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making time on such short notice. Victoria. The board chair, Marcus Fielding, looked uncomfortable. Before we begin, there are some concerns that have been raised. Serious concerns about the expansion proposal and about your leadership. I'm aware. That's why I'm here to address them directly. It's more than just the expansion. Richard's voice cut through the room. There are questions about your judgment, your decision-making process, and whether you've been fully transparent with this board. Victoria kept her face neutral. What specifically are you questioning? Your manufacturing plans, for one. We've heard rumors about facilities in Vietnam, subsidiaries in Singapore, arrangements that weren't disclosed in your original proposal. There it was. The bait swallowed whole. Victoria felt adrenaline spike through her system, but she kept her voice calm, curious. Where did you hear these rumors? Sources close to the project. Are you denying them? I'm asking where you heard them, Richard, because the expansion proposal I presented to this board contained no Vietnam facilities, No Singapore subsidiaries, and no arrangements beyond what was explicitly detailed in my documentation. Richard's confidence flickered. Then you're saying you haven't discussed these elements with anyone? I'm saying the expansion plan is exactly what I presented. Nothing more, nothing less. Victoria pulled out her laptop connected to the projector. Unless you have information suggesting otherwise. I have sources indicating you discussed these details with an outside consultant. A mechanic of all people. Richard's voice dripped derision. Just yesterday morning, in fact. The room went silent. Every board member stared at Victoria, waiting for her response. She let the moment stretch, then smiled. You're absolutely right. I did have a conversation yesterday morning with Jake Morrison, owner of Morrison's Auto Repair. We discussed manufacturing timelines, supplier contracts, and financial structures. She paused. We discussed completely fabricated details that don't exist in any real proposal as part of a test to identify who's been conducting illegal surveillance of my private office communications. Richard's face went white. That's absurd. Is it? Because the only way you could know about yesterday's conversation is if you were monitoring my office, which would explain how you knew my car had trouble before I told you, how you knew I'd canceled meetings, how you've been one step ahead of me for weeks. Victoria pulled up a photo on the screen, the bug Frank had removed from her office. This audio surveillance device was found behind a photograph in my office planted there Monday night by someone using falsified maintenance credentials. It's been recording every conversation, every call, every private moment since then. The board erupted in chaos. Voices overlapping questions, shouted accusations flying. Marcus pounded the table for order. This is a serious allegation, Victoria. Do you have proof? I have the device itself currently being analyzed by a private security firm. I have building security footage showing an unauthorized person in my office. I have testimony from multiple witnesses. She looked directly at Richard. And I have Richard's own words using information he could only have obtained through illegal surveillance as evidence of conspiracy. This is insane. Richard stood his composure cracking. You're making wild accusations because you're desperate. Your car breaks down. You miss meetings, you start consorting with mechanics and private investigators, and now you're claiming some elaborate conspiracy. The board needs to see this for what it is, a woman having a breakdown. Am I? Then explain how you knew about Vietnam and Singapore. Explain how you knew details of a conversation that took place in my locked office yesterday morning. Explain how you've anticipated my moves for weeks. Victoria's voice rose. Explain how my car's electrical system was deliberately sabotaged the night before our last board meeting, and how you called it car trouble before anyone told you what kind of trouble it was. Yeah. Richard's mask slipped completely. Rage flickered across his face before he caught himself, smoothed it back to false calm. I won't dignify this paranoia with a response. Marcus, the board needs to vote. Either we remove Victoria from her position and install leadership that's actually stable, or we watch this company implode under her delusions. Don't do this, Richard. Victoria's voice dropped to ice. Walk away now, resign quietly, and I won't press charges. Keep pushing, and I'll make sure every piece of evidence goes to the FBI. Corporate espionage, identity theft, sabotage, those are federal crimes. You'll lose everything. You have no proof. I have enough to destroy your reputation, to make sure you never work in this industry again, to ensure that when people hear your name they think criminal instead of executive. Victoria leaned forward. Is my job really worth your freedom? The room held its breath. Richard stood frozen, calculating odds, weighing risks. Finally, he grabbed his briefcase. This board will regret supporting her. You're betting on someone who's clearly unstable, who brings criminals into her personal life, who makes decisions based on paranoia instead of facts. He looked at Victoria with pure hatred. You've won today, but this isn't over. Yes, it is. Security will escort you out. Your access to company systems has been revoked. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Victoria's voice didn't waver. Goodbye, Richard. He left, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Victoria turned back to the board, her hands shaking, but her voice steady. I apologize for that scene, but I won't apologize for protecting this company and myself from someone who was willing to commit crimes to take control. The expansion proposal stands as originally presented. I'm happy to answer any questions. Marcus cleared his throat. I think we need time to process this. All of this. Victoria, can you give us the room? She nodded and left her legs barely supporting her. In the hallway, Jennifer stood wide-eyed. Miss Blackwell, what just happened? Security just escorted Mr. Cross out and he was screaming about lawyers. Later, Jennifer, I need... Victoria's phone rang. Jake. She answered, her voice shaking. It worked. He took the bait. He's gone. Are you okay? I don't know. The board's deliberating. They might still vote me out. This could all be for nothing. It's not nothing. You stood up to him. You fought back. That matters. Victoria slid down the wall, sitting on the floor in her $3,000 suit phone pressed to her ear. I'm so tired, Jake. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but you're almost through it. Just hang on a little longer. Will you... She stopped, embarrassed. Never mind. Will I what? Will you come here? I know it's stupid. You have work. I'm being weak. You're being human. That's different. I'm on my way. 20 minutes later, Jake stepped off the elevator, grease-stained and out of place among the corporate glass and steel. Victoria had moved to her office by then, staring out the windows without seeing anything. He knocked once and entered without waiting. Hey. Hey. She didn't turn around. I destroyed a man's career today, ended his livelihood, made sure he'll probably face criminal charges. He destroyed his own career when he decided to commit crimes. I know. I know that logically. But I keep thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation I'm not seeing? Jake moved to stand beside her. Then the evidence will show it. But Victoria, you saw his face when you confronted him. That wasn't innocence. That was rage at being caught. I've never done anything like this before. Business competition, yes. Hostile negotiations, sure. But this... She gestured helplessly. This was personal. Ugly. Mean. You defended yourself. There's nothing mean about that. They stood in silence, watching the city below, until Jennifer's voice came through the intercom. Miss Blackwell, the board is ready. Victoria's stomach dropped. This is it. You've got this. How do you know? Because you're Victoria Blackwell. You don't lose. Jake smiled. And if somehow you do, you've got a standing job offer at my shop. Pays terrible, but the coffee's worse, so it balances out. Despite everything, she laughed. I'll keep that in mind. She walked back into the boardroom alone, Jake waiting in her office, because some battles you had to fight solo. The board members looked exhausted, shell-shocked, angry and confused in equal measure. Marcus stood. Victoria, we've voted. 8-4. Her heart stopped. The expansion is approved, your leadership is affirmed, and we're requesting a full security audit of all company facilities and systems with immediate investigation into Richard Cross's activities. He paused. We also owe you an apology. We should have seen the signs, should have questioned his accusations more critically. We failed you. Victoria's knees went weak. Thank you, all of you. I promise I won't let you down. You never have. We just forgot that for a moment. Marcus gathered his papers. Go home, Victoria. You've earned a rest. She made it back to her office before the shaking started. Jake caught her as her legs gave out, guided her to the couch, held her while adrenaline and relief and exhaustion crashed over her in waves. You did it, he murmured. It's over. It's over, she repeated, trying to make herself believe it. But even as she said the words, even as Jake held her and Jennifer brought water, she didn't drink. Victoria's mind kept circling back to Richard's parting words. This isn't over. It had sounded less like a threat and more like a promise, and men like Richard Cross didn't make empty promises. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your victory. Enjoy it while it lasts. Victoria showed Jake. His face hardened. Frank needs to see this. Now. Maybe it's just Richard being bitter. Or maybe it's Richard making good on his threat. Victoria, this isn't over. Not really. We exposed him. We got him fired, but we didn't put him in jail. He's still out there, still angry, still connected. Jake pulled out his own phone. I'm calling Frank, and you're not staying in this office alone tonight. Jake, I can't just... Yes, you can. You can make one decision that prioritizes safety over pride. Please. Victoria looked at the text message at Richard's promise echoing in those anonymous words and nodded. Okay, but I'm buying dinner. Good dinner, not diner food. Deal. Emma's going to be disappointed she missed all the excitement. She can come too. I'll order enough for an army. They left the office together as the sun set over Seattle, and Victoria tried not to think about how fragile victory felt when your enemy was still armed and planning his next move. She tried to focus on survival, on making it through one more day, on the strange comfort of knowing a mechanic and his daughter had somehow become the closest thing she had to family. But late that night, alone in her penthouse, while Jake and Emma stayed in the guest room because he'd refused to leave her unprotected, Victoria stood at her windows and wondered how many more battles she'd have to fight before she could finally rest. Her phone buzzed one last time. Another unknown number. Another message. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. Sleep well, Victoria. She didn't sleep at all. Morning found Victoria standing in her kitchen at 5 a.m., making coffee she wouldn't drink while Jake slept on her couch and Emma curled up in the guest bed clutching a stuffed rabbit. The threats from last night sat heavy in her chest. Richard's words looping endlessly through her exhausted mind. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. Her phone rang, shattering the quiet. Frank Peterson, his voice rough with urgency. Victoria, we have a problem. Big problem. What happened? Richard filed a lawsuit at midnight. He's claiming wrongful termination, defamation, and emotional distress. But that's not the worst part. Victoria's stomach clenched. What's the worst part? He's also filed criminal complaints against you. Harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud, abuse of corporate power. It's all bullshit, but it ties you up in legal proceedings for months, maybe years. He can't do that. We have evidence he committed crimes, not me. He's claiming the bug was planted by you to frame him. That the fake information about Vietnam was you setting him up. That everything you accused him of was actually your own crimes projected onto him. Frank paused. Victoria, he's got lawyers, expensive ones, and they're good. So what do? You get your own lawyers, today, and you prepare for the fight of your life because Richard Cross isn't going down quietly. Jake appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, concern etched across his face. Victoria ended the call and filled him in, her voice flat with shock. He's suing me. He's pressing charges. He's turned everything around and made me the criminal. That's insane. We have proof. We have a bug that he's claiming I planted. We have fake information that he's saying proves I'm unstable. We have my word against his, and he's got better lawyers. Victoria set down her coffee cup before she threw it. I destroyed my enemy, and he's destroying me back, and I don't know how to stop it. Then we find more evidence. Real evidence he can't twist. Jake pulled out his phone. Frank said Richard's connected to Sentinel Solutions through shell companies. We dig deeper, find the paper trail, prove he paid for surveillance. That could take months. So we work fast. Victoria, you didn't come this far to give up now. I'm not giving up. I'm just... She stopped, swallowed hard. I'm scared. Really scared. Not of losing the company or my reputation. I'm scared that I brought this into your life, into Emma's life. Richard knows about you now. He knows you helped me. What if he comes after you next? Jake crossed the kitchen, took her shoulders gently. Let him try. I've survived worse than angry executives. Have you? Because Richard Cross is vicious and connected, and now he's got nothing to lose? Men with nothing to lose do terrible things. So do women backed into corners. You're stronger than you think. Am I? Because right now I feel like I'm drowning, and every time I surface someone pushes me back under. Emma's voice interrupted from the hallway. Are you guys fighting? You're talking really loud. Victoria wiped her eyes quickly. Sorry, sweetie. Adult stuff. We didn't mean to wake you. I wasn't sleeping. I was listening. Emma padded into the kitchen in her oversized sleep shirt, looking far too serious for a 10-year-old. The bad man is trying to hurt you again. It's complicated, Em. Jake started, but Emma cut him off. It's not complicated. He's mean, and you're nice, and mean people always try to hurt nice people because they're jealous. She looked at Victoria with ancient eyes. My mom used to say that bullies only win if you let them scare you into quitting. Are you going to quit? No. Then he won't win. Emma said it with such certainty that Victoria almost believed it. They spent breakfast planning strategy like generals before battle. Frank arrived at 7 with a lawyer he trusted, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in corporate litigation and had a reputation for eating opponents alive. Patricia reviewed the lawsuit, the criminal complaints, and the evidence they'd gathered, her face growing grimmer with each page. He's good. I'll give him that. Every accusation is just plausible enough to create doubt, and he's buried you in paperwork that will take months to untangle. So I'm screwed. I didn't say that. I said he's good. But he made mistakes. Patricia pulled out a highlighter. See here. He claims you planted the bug on Monday night, but building security shows you were at a dinner meeting with investors until 11 p.m. Here. He says you discussed the fake Vietnam deal with multiple people, but if we can prove you only discussed it in your bugged office, that shows he was listening. And here, she tapped another section. He claims emotional distress from your accusations, but his own emails show he was planning to present concerns about your leadership before any of this happened. That's premeditation, not reaction. Victoria felt hope flicker. So we can fight this. We can. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, and it won't be cheap. But yes, we can fight this. Patricia closed the folder. Question is, are you ready for what that means? Depositions. Media scrutiny. Your entire life examined under a microscope. Richard will dig up every mistake you've ever made, every relationship that ended badly, every business decision someone could question. He'll make you the villain and himself the victim, and some people will believe him. Let them. I know the truth. The truth doesn't always matter in court. Perception does. Story does. And right now, Richard's telling a story about a powerful woman who destroyed a man's career to cover her own incompetence. Patricia met Victoria's eyes. We need to tell a better story. We need evidence so overwhelming that his narrative falls apart. How? We find out who else Richard's hurt, who else he's surveilled or sabotaged. One victim is an accusation. Multiple victims is the pattern. Patterns win cases. Jake leaned forward. The maintenance worker who planted the bug. Can we find him? Sentinel Solutions won't give up client information without a subpoena, and that takes time we don't have. Frank shook his head. But I've got contacts in that world. People who've worked for Sentinel and left unhappy. Let me make some calls. Do it. Victoria felt her strategic mind engaging the part of her that had built a company from grief and determination. Patricia, start building our defense. Frank, find whoever planted that bug. Jake. I'm going to the shop. My mechanics have been covering for me, but I can't abandon my business indefinitely. Of course. I didn't mean. But I'm taking Emma to stay with Mrs. Rodriguez. If Richard's as dangerous as we think, I don't want her anywhere near this. He looked at his daughter. Em, pack a bag. You're having a sleepover. For how long? However long it takes. Emma's face crumpled. But I want to help. I want to make sure Victoria's okay. The best way to help is to stay safe. Please, baby, for me. After Jake and Emma left, after Patricia departed with files and determination, after Frank made his calls and promised updates by evening, Victoria sat alone in her penthouse and felt the walls closing in. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members, employees, reporters who'd somehow heard about the lawsuit. She ignored all of them. At noon, Jennifer called. "Miss Blackwell, there are protesters outside the building. About 30 people with signs saying you're a corporate tyrant and demanding your resignation." "Who organized them?" "I don't know. They just showed up an hour ago." Richard's doing, obviously. Salting the earth, making sure even if Victoria won legally, she lost publicly. She closed her eyes and tried to remember why she'd wanted this job in the first place, why she'd sacrificed everything to keep it. The answer felt increasingly hollow. Her father had wanted her to run Blackwell Automotive, not because he believed in her, but because she was all he had left after her mother died. Duty, not love. Obligation, not choice. And Victoria had spent 15 years trying to prove she was worthy of a position she'd never actually wanted, chasing approval from a man who couldn't give it even when he was alive. The realization hit like a punch to the chest. She'd built her entire identity around being CEO, around being strong and untouchable and successful, and for what? To spend her nights alone in a penthouse, to have no one who cared whether she lived or died except a mechanic she'd known for 3 days, and his daughter who believed in goodness Victoria had forgotten existed. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Victoria Blackwell." "Miss Blackwell, my name is David Torres. I used to work for Sentinel Solutions." Victoria's breath caught. "Go on." "Frank Peterson contacted me. Said you might need testimony about the company's practices, about Richard Cross." He paused. "I was the one who planted the bug in your office." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of being a criminal for rich people who think money makes everything legal. Because Richard Cross threatened my family when I said I wanted out. Because sometimes you have to do the right thing, even when it's hard." His voice was steady, resolved. "I have recordings of my conversations with Richard. Instructions he gave me. Payments he made. Everything you need to prove conspiracy. Why didn't you go to the police and say what I'm a criminal who got paid to commit crimes? They'd arrest me first and ask questions later. But if I testify for you, if I help take down someone worse than me, maybe that counts for something." Victoria's mind raced. "David, this is incredibly brave. But you understand you'll face charges too." "I know, but I've got kids, 2 daughters. I don't want them growing up thinking their dad was a coward who let bad people win." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out even criminals have lines they won't cross. Meet me tomorrow. Bring everything you have. We'll get you immunity in exchange for testimony." "Tomorrow might be too late. Richard knows I'm talking. He's already sent people to convince me to stay quiet." "What kind of people?" "The kind who don't take no for an answer. Look, I'm at a motel in Tacoma, room 217 at the Pacific Inn. If you want this evidence, come tonight. After that, I'm disappearing." Victoria checked the time. 3 p.m. "I'll be there by 6. Come alone. Richard has eyes everywhere. I'm bringing a lawyer and a security consultant. Non-negotiable." David hesitated, then agreed. 6 p.m. Don't be late." Victoria called Patricia first, then Frank, outlining the situation. Frank's response was immediate and sharp. "This could be a trap. Richard luring you out of the city away from witnesses. Or it could be the evidence we need to end this. Either way, I'm going." "Then I'm coming with you, armed." "Fine. Pick me up at 5. She called Jake next, told him about David Torres and the meeting in Tacoma. His silence stretched uncomfortably. "Jake, say something. I'm trying to figure out how to tell you this is dangerous without sounding like I'm telling you what to do." "It is dangerous. But so is waiting for Richard to destroy me piece by piece. At least this is proactive." "Victoria, if this is a trap, if something happens to you..." He stopped. "Emma will be devastated. She's already bonded with you. Hell, I've already..." He stopped again. Just be careful. Please. I will. I promise. That's what Sarah said, the day she went to her last doctor's appointment. I'll be careful, I promise. And then she collapsed in the parking lot and died before the ambulance arrived. His voice cracked. I can't watch someone else I care about walk into danger. I can't do it again. Jake, I have to do this. I know. Just call me when it's over. Let me know you're okay. I will. But after she hung up, Victoria sat with the weight of his words. Someone else I care about. When had she become someone Jake cared about? When had he become someone whose opinion mattered more than board members and investors? When had this mechanic and his daughter become the people she thought about when considering risk and safety? Frank arrived at 5 professionally armed and looking grim. Patricia pulled up minutes later in a sedan briefcase in hand. They drove to Tacoma in tense silence, the city giving way to suburbs and then to the seedier motels that clustered near the port. Pacific Inn was exactly what Victoria expected. Cracked pavement, flickering neon, the kind of place where people came to hide or disappear. Room 217 was on the second floor, accessible by an external staircase. Frank went firsthand near his concealed weapon, scanning for threats. He knocked 3 times. David Torres, Frank Peterson. We spoke earlier. The door opened, 6 inches security chain still engaged. A man's face appeared mid-30s, exhausted, scared. You're early. Better early than dead. Can we come in? David studied them, then unlatched the chain. The room was standard motel despair, 2 beds, a bathroom that had seen better decades, a window overlooking the parking lot. On one bed sat a laptop, several phones, and a stack of documents that looked like evidence. Miss Blackwell. David extended his hand. Thanks for coming. Thank you for contacting us. You said you have recordings. Everything. Richard's instructions, payment confirmations, threats when I wanted to quit. It's all here. He opened the laptop, pulled up audio files. This one's from 3 weeks ago. He hit play. Richard's voice filled the room, distorted slightly by phone recording, but unmistakably his. The CEO needs to be discredited. I don't care how you do it. Plant evidence, create scandals, make her look incompetent. Whatever it takes. Money is no object. Patricia's eyes lit up. This is perfect. This is exactly what we need. There's more. Emails showing payments from his shell companies to Sentinel Solutions. Text messages coordinating the car sabotage. Even photos of me inside Miss Blackwell's office planting the bug. David looked at Victoria. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm trying to make it right. Why did you do it in the first place? Victoria had to ask. Money, mainly. I've got kids in private school, a wife with medical bills. Sentinel offered $50,000 for one job. No questions asked. I told myself it was just corporate espionage. Nothing violent, nothing that would really hurt anyone. He laughed bitterly. Turns out helping destroy someone's career does hurt them. Who knew? David, this evidence is incredible, but you understand you'll need to testify in court. You'll be cross-examined. Richard's lawyers will tear into your credibility. Patricia's tone was gentle but firm. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared to tell the truth, whether anyone believes me. He shrugged. That's up to them. Frank was photographing documents, copying files, building a digital archive of evidence when the window exploded. Glass showered inward, and something metal bounced across the floor, spewing smoke. Victoria's brain registered tear gas a second before Frank grabbed her, and Patricia dragging them toward the door. Out now. But the door burst open before they reached it. 2 men in masks, moving with professional efficiency. Frank went for his weapon, but one of the men was faster, tasing him. He went down hard, convulsing. Patricia screamed. David ran for the bathroom and didn't make it, tackled by the second intruder. Victoria's eyes burned from the gas, her lungs screaming. She stumbled backward, trying to reach the window anywhere that wasn't filling with toxic smoke. Strong hands grabbed her arms, zip-tied them behind her back. Someone shoved a hood over her head, cutting off light and air and hope. Richard sends his regards. Then nothing but darkness, and the sound of her own panicked breathing as they carried her down the stairs and threw her into a vehicle. The engine roared to life, tires squealing, and Victoria understood with crystal clarity that this wasn't a legal battle anymore. This was survival. The drive lasted 30 minutes or 30 hours, Victoria couldn't tell. Time became meaningless in the suffocating darkness of the hood, in the terror of not knowing where they were taking her or what would happen when they arrived. She tried to stay calm, tried to think strategically, but panic kept clawing at her throat. The vehicle finally stopped. Hands dragged her out, marched her forward. She heard a door open, felt temperature change from cool evening air to stale indoor atmosphere. They pushed her into a chair, secured her zip-tied wrists to something behind her. Don't move, don't scream, don't do anything stupid. Footsteps retreated. A door closed. Silence, except for Victoria's ragged breathing and the thundering of her heart. She tested the restraints, solid professional. No give. She tried to slow her breathing to think past the fear. Frank, Patricia. David, were they okay? Were they hurt? Were they even alive? Time crawled. Victoria's arms ached. Her wrists burned where the zip ties cut into skin. She tried to orient herself through sound, but heard nothing useful. No traffic. No voices. Just oppressive quiet that suggested she was far from help. Finally, footsteps approached. The door opened, closed. Someone removed her hood, and harsh fluorescent light stabbed her eyes. When her vision cleared, Richard Cross stood in front of her, perfectly composed in his expensive suit, looking at her like she was an insect he was deciding whether to crush. Victoria, I'm disappointed. I thought you were smarter than this. Richard, I thought you were many things, but I didn't think you were stupid enough to commit kidnapping. Kidnapping. He smiled. You came to a motel in Tacoma to meet a known criminal. Something went wrong. Tragic, really. The kind of thing that happens when CEOs make poor decisions. People know where I am. Frank, Patricia, David. David Torres is already on a plane to Mexico with $50,000 and a new identity. Frank Peterson and Patricia Chen are at a hospital being treated for tear gas exposure and will remember nothing useful. And you... Richard crouched to her eye level. You're going to disappear. A woman under tremendous stress, facing lawsuits and investigations, overwhelmed by the pressure. People will assume you ran, or had a breakdown, or worse. You won't get away with this. I already have. I've been planning this for months, Victoria. The car sabotage was just the beginning. The surveillance was to learn your patterns, your weaknesses, who you trusted. And you played perfectly into every trap. Jake knows I'm here. He'll go to the police. Jake Morrison, the mechanic. The man with no credibility, no resources, no power. Richard laughed. Let him go to the police. They'll find no evidence. No body, no crime, just another CEO who couldn't handle the pressure and disappeared. Victoria forced her voice steady. So what now? You kill me, that's your big plan. Kill you. No, that would be crude, traceable. Richard stood, adjusted his cufflinks. I'm going to let you go, drop you somewhere far from Seattle, give you some cash, and trust that your survival instinct will keep you running. You'll disappear yourself, Victoria. And in your absence, I'll take control of Blackwell Automotive, dismantle everything you built and sell it for parts. The board won't let you. The board will have no choice. With you gone, with evidence of your instability, with criminal investigations pending, they'll beg me to restore order. And I will write before I destroy everything your father built. His smile was pure malice. You took my career. I'm taking your legacy. He walked to the door, paused. Someone will be back in a few hours to drive you wherever you want to go. I suggest you think carefully about how far you want to run, because if you ever come back to Seattle, if you ever try to reclaim what was yours, I'll finish this conversation differently." He opened the door. "Goodbye, Victoria. It's been educational." The door closed, the lock clicked, and Victoria sat alone in the fluorescent-lit room tied to a chair facing the destruction of everything she'd sacrificed her life to build. But somewhere in the despair, somewhere beneath the fear and exhaustion and pain, Victoria Blackwell felt something else rising. Not defeat. Not surrender. Something harder, sharper forged in parking garages and board meetings, and 3 days of learning that strength wasn't about being untouchable. It was about refusing to stay down when someone knocked you flat. She pulled against the zip ties until her wrists bled, until the plastic finally weakened enough to break. Her hands free, Victoria stood on shaking legs and looked around the room. No windows, one door locked. But there was a vent near the ceiling, and Victoria had spent 15 years being underestimated. Time to remind Richard Cross why that was a mistake. Victoria dragged the chair beneath the vent, her bloodied wrists screaming protest with every movement. She climbed onto the seat, wobbling on $3,000 heels that had never been designed for escape attempts. The vent cover was secured with screws she couldn't reach, couldn't turn, even if she could. She was about to climb down when she heard voices outside the door. "Boss said 2 hours. It's been 90 minutes. So, we wait." Not like she's going anywhere. Victoria's heart hammered. 2 guards, maybe armed, definitely bigger than her. Fighting wasn't an option, but neither was waiting for Richard's people to drive her into the wilderness and leave her for dead. She looked around the room again, desperate for anything useful. The chair, the fluorescent light fixture, her shoes. Her shoes. Victoria kicked off one heel, tested its weight. The steel-reinforced stiletto wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. She climbed down, positioned herself beside the door, and slammed her shoe against the metal frame 3 times hard. "Help! Please, someone help me!" Footsteps approached. "Shut up in there!" "Please, I'm having a heart attack. I can't breathe." Victoria clutched her chest, gasping loudly. "Please, I need help." The guards conferred in low voices. Finally, the lock clicked. The door opened 6 inches. A man's face appeared annoyed and skeptical. "Lady, you're fine. Just sit down and—" Victoria swung the shoe with everything she had. The heel caught him in the temple, not hard enough to knock him out, but enough to make him stagger back, cursing. She didn't wait to see if he recovered. She ran. The hallway was industrial concrete floors, exposed pipes, the kind of warehouse district that probably surrounded half of Tacoma's port. Victoria sprinted toward a red exit sign, her remaining shoe clicking against concrete. Behind her shouting, footsteps pounding, the second guard joining the chase. She hit the exit door at full speed, crashed through into cool night air and loading docks and shipping containers stacked like metal mountains. No people, no cars. Just industrial wasteland and the distant sound of water against pier pilings. There. Victoria ran between containers, her lungs burning her feet, protesting every step. She'd been an athlete in college before the business degree and the corporate life, but that was 20 years and a lifetime ago. The guards were faster, younger, trained for exactly this kind of pursuit. She ducked behind a container, pressed herself flat against rusted metal, trying to quiet her gasping breath. The footsteps slowed, spread out, hunting methodically. "Come on out, Miss Blackwell. You're just making this harder on yourself." Victoria's hand found her remaining shoe. She threw it hard in the opposite direction. It clattered against metal 50 feet away, and the footsteps converged on the sound. She ran the other way, toward the water, toward anything that wasn't Richard's men. She made it 3 container rows before her foot caught on a chain. She went down hard palms, shredding on concrete. The breath knocked from her lungs. Strong hands grabbed her arms before she could recover, hauled her upright. The guard she'd hit with her shoe held her blood trickling from his temple, rage written across his face. "Stupid move, lady. Really stupid." "Let me go." "Not a chance. Boss wants you gone, you're gone. Whether you make it easy or hard is up to you." A voice cut through the darkness. "Federal agent hands where I can see them." Everyone froze. From between the containers, Frank Peterson emerged, looking like death warmed over eyes red from tear gas, face bruised, but his weapon steady and his badge held high. Frank Peterson, former Seattle PD, currently contracted with the FBI on a kidnapping investigation. Release her. Now. The guard holding Victoria hesitated. "You're bluffing. There's no FBI." Want to test that theory? Because federal kidnapping charges carry mandatory minimums, and right now you're one trigger pull away from spending the next 20 years in prison. We didn't kidnap anyone. She came to that motel voluntarily. And then your associate tear-gassed the room and zip-tied her wrists. I've got photographs of the injuries. I've got witness testimony. And I've got a very motivated federal prosecutor who wants Richard Cross behind bars. Frank's voice was ice. Last chance. Let her go, or I start shooting. The guard released Victoria. She stumbled forward, nearly fell, but Frank caught her with his free hand while keeping his weapon trained on the two men. "Victoria, get behind me." She did, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and relief. Frank backed them toward the edge of the dock, weapon never wavering. Tell Richard his plan failed. Tell him evidence has been submitted to the FBI. Tell him he's got about 12 hours before the arrests start. Frank smiled grimly. And tell him Frank Peterson says hello. They reached Frank's car, a battered sedan parked between containers, and he shoved Victoria into the passenger seat, kept his weapon visible until they were moving, speeding away from the warehouse district. Only when they hit the main highway did he finally lower the gun. Jesus Christ, Victoria. When you don't call for 3 hours when Patricia wakes up at the hospital and you're missing. He stopped, voice shaking. I thought we'd lost you. How did you find me? David Torres. Before they gassed the room, he activated a tracker app on his phone. We've been following the signal, but we couldn't get backup in time. Local police thought it was a prank. FBI wanted more evidence before moving. Frank's jaw tightened. So I came alone. You could have been killed. Yeah, well, Jake would have killed me if I let anything happen to you. Kids got it bad. Victoria's throat tightened. Is he okay, Emma? Safe. Emma's with Mrs. Rodriguez. Jake's been calling every 20 minutes demanding updates. You should call him. Let him know you're alive. Victoria pulled out her phone miraculously, still in her jacket pocket, and dialed with trembling fingers. Jake answered before the first ring finished. Victoria. Thank God. Are you hurt? Where are you? I'm okay. Frank got me out. We're heading back to Seattle. Richard's men grabbed you. They took you. If Frank hadn't... His voice broke. Don't ever do that to me again. Don't ever make me think I lost you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Come to the shop, both of you. We need to figure out what happens next. They arrived at Morrison's Auto Repair at 11 p.m. to find every light blazing and Jake pacing the service bay like a caged animal. The moment Victoria stepped out of the car, he was there pulling her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. You're okay. You're really okay. I'm okay. But she wasn't. Not really. She was bruised and bleeding and terrified and exhausted, but she was alive, and that was something. Frank saved me. Again. Jake released her enough to grip Frank's shoulder. Thank you. Seriously. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got a problem. Frank gestured to the shop office. David Torres, the tracker app I was following. It stopped transmitting an hour ago, right around the time Richard said he'd put David on a plane to Mexico. So Richard was telling the truth. David took the money and ran. Or Richard killed him and disabled the tracker. Either way, our star witness is gone and all his evidence with him. Victoria felt the last of her hope crumble. Then we have nothing. No testimony, no recordings, just my word against Richard's. We have the evidence David gave us before the attack. The recordings on his laptop, the documents, the photos. which a defense attorney will argue are fabricated or obtained illegally, without David to authenticate them to testify under oath. She stopped forcing herself to think past the exhaustion. We need something Richard can't explain away, something that proves conspiracy without relying on David's testimony. Jake had been quiet, but now he spoke. The bug. The one we found in your office. Can we trace it back to Richard through the hardware? Sentinel Solutions buys these devices in bulk. Serial numbers lead nowhere. Frank shook his head. We'd need the purchase order, the installation contract, something with Richard's signature or payment authorization. What about the shell companies, the ones connecting Richard to Sentinel? Buried under lawyers and LLC filings. By the time we unravel that mess, Richard will have disappeared his assets and fled the country. They stood in frustrated silence until Victoria's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Victoria Blackwell. Miss Blackwell, my name is Margaret Torres. I'm David's wife. The woman's voice shook with barely controlled fury. I just found out what my husband was involved in. What you people dragged him into. Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry. We never meant for David to be in danger. If there's anything we can do, you can finish what he started. David called me 2 hours ago. Said he was sorry, said he'd made mistakes, but was trying to fix them. Then the call cut off. She paused, and Victoria heard tears beneath the anger. I don't know if my husband is alive or dead, but I know he kept insurance. Evidence he never told Richard Cross about hidden somewhere. Even Sentinel Solutions couldn't find it. Victoria's heart jumped. Where? He wouldn't tell me details, said it was safer if I didn't know. But he did say if anything happened to him, I should tell you to check where it all began, where Richard first approached him. Margaret's voice hardened. My husband might have been a criminal, Miss Blackwell, but he was my criminal. And if Richard Cross hurt him, I want that bastard to pay. Where did Richard first approach David? A restaurant in downtown Seattle, the Metropolitan Grill. They met in a private dining room 6 months ago. David said that's when he understood what he was getting into, but by then, it was too late to back out. Thank you, Mrs. Torres. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. Just make sure my girls know their father died trying to do the right thing. The call ended. Victoria looked at Frank and Jake, hope rekindling. David hid evidence at the Metropolitan Grill, somewhere in or near the private dining room where Richard recruited him. That was 6 months ago. The evidence could be gone, could have been cleaned, renovated, thrown away. Frank was already pulling up information on his phone. But it's worth checking. Restaurant closes at midnight. We've got less than an hour. They piled into Frank's car and broke every speed limit getting downtown. The Metropolitan Grill occupied a corner building with old-school elegance, leather booths, dark wood, the kind of place where deals were made and careers were destroyed over perfectly cooked steaks. Frank flashed his credentials at the hostess. We need access to your private dining room. Official investigation. Sir, we close in 30 minutes. Can this wait until... No, it can't. Victoria stepped forward. I'm Victoria Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Automotive. 6 months ago, a man named David Torres met someone in your private dining room. That meeting led to crimes that have destroyed lives. We believe evidence was hidden in that room, and we need to find it before it's too late. The hostess looked between them. Frank's official bearing, Jake's determined face, Victoria's desperation. Something in the story resonated. Room's this way, but I'm staying with you. Management rules. The private dining room was exactly what Victoria expected, intimate, expensive, soundproofed for confidential conversations. They searched systematically. Frank checked under the table behind paintings inside air vents. Jake examined light fixtures, electrical outlets, anywhere something small could be concealed. Victoria went through the sideboard, the wine rack, the serving station. Nothing. Where would you hide something in a room like this? Jake asked the hostess. Somewhere it wouldn't be found during normal cleaning, but wouldn't be destroyed either. She thought about it. We deep clean quarterly. Anything loose or removable gets checked. But there are places we never touch inside the walls under permanent fixtures behind the wainscoting. Victoria looked at the walls. Expensive dark wood paneling ran from floor to ceiling, broken only by a gas fireplace on one wall. She approached the fireplace, examined the mantel the decorative tiles surround. Her fingers found a loose tile on the right side, wiggled it. It shifted. Here. Something's here. Jake helped her pry the tile free. Behind it, taped to the interior wall, was a waterproof bag containing a thumb drive and a handwritten note. If you're reading this, I'm either dead or gone. Everything Richard Cross said and did is on this drive, unedited recordings, original documents, payment records he doesn't know I kept. I didn't want to be a criminal, but I was. And maybe this makes up for it a little. David Torres. Victoria held the thumb drive like it was made of gold. We've got him. We actually got him. Frank was already on his phone. I'm calling the FBI, real FBI this time. We hand this over tonight, let them verify authenticity, start building the federal case. Richard will run the moment he hears. We need to move fast. FBI's faster. Trust me. They drove straight to the FBI field office in downtown Seattle, where Frank's credentials and the evidence got them immediate attention from a night supervisor who called in the on-duty prosecutor. Victoria, Jake, and Frank spent 4 hours giving statements, turning over every piece of evidence they'd collected, watching federal agents review David's files with growing excitement. At 3 a.m., the prosecutor, a woman named Sarah Kim, with sharp eyes and sharper questions, called them into a conference room. This is solid. Really solid. Conspiracy, corporate espionage, kidnapping, and enough wire fraud to keep Richard Cross in federal prison for 20 years minimum. She closed her folder. We'll execute arrest warrants at 6 a.m. Mr. Cross, his associates at Sentinel Solutions, everyone involved. What about David Torres? Margaret's question haunted Victoria. Is he alive? We don't know yet, but we've issued bolos, contacted Mexican authorities, flagged his passport. If he's alive, we'll find him. Sarah looked at Victoria. Miss Blackwell, you should know that you'll be a key witness in this case. Defense will try to discredit you, claim this is a vendetta, accuse you of fabricating evidence. Let them try. I'm ready. Good. Because this is going to be ugly. High profile. Media will dissect every aspect of your life and Richard's. Your company will be scrutinized. Your leadership will be questioned. Sarah's expression softened slightly. You've been through hell already. It's about to get worse before it gets better. I know, but at least this time I'm not alone. Victoria glanced at Jake, who'd stayed by her side through every statement, every question, every moment of doubt. He met her eyes and smiled, exhausted, but genuine. They left the FBI building as dawn painted Seattle's skyline in shades of pink and gold. Frank drove them back to Morrison's auto repair in companionable silence, all of them too tired for conversation. Emma was already there, having snuck out of Mrs. Rodriguez's house at first light to make sure Dad was okay. You're alive. Emma launched herself at Victoria, hugging her waist. Dad said you were kidnapped by bad guys and might not come back. I came back. The bad guys weren't as smart as they thought. Because you're smarter. Obviously. Emma looked up with serious eyes. Are you going to keep fighting them, even though it's hard? Yes, because some things are worth fighting for. Like what? Victoria thought about her company, her father's legacy, everything she'd sacrificed to reach the top. But when she answered, those weren't the things she mentioned. Like truth and justice, and making sure people who hurt others face consequences. She paused. And like friends who show up when you need them most. Jake's hand found hers, squeezed gently. Emma grinned like she'd just won a prize. Good, because we like having you around. You make Dad less grumpy, and you eat diner food without complaining, and you let me explain science stuff without getting bored. Emma tugged Victoria's hand. Will you come to my science fair next Tuesday? It got rescheduled because of teacher conferences. I'll be there. Front row. Promise. Promise. The arrests happened at 6 a.m. as planned. Richard Cross taken from his home in handcuffs while news cameras captured every moment. 3 Sentinel Solutions employees, including the guards who'd held Victoria at the warehouse. By noon, the story dominated every news channel. Corporate conspiracy attempted murder, a CEO's dramatic rescue. Victoria's phone exploded with calls from board members, reporters, employees. She ignored them all and slept on Jake's couch for 14 hours straight, while he and Emma quietly worked in the shop. She woke to the smell of pizza and Emma's voice announcing that someone named Agent Kim was on the phone with updates. Victoria took the call in Jake's office, her body aching, her mind clearer than it had been in days. "Miss Blackwell, good news. We found David Torres. He's alive in protective custody and willing to testify. Richard's people drugged him and dumped him at the border, but Mexican authorities picked him up. He'll be back in Seattle tomorrow." Relief flooded through Victoria. "Thank God. Does his wife know?" "We notified her an hour ago. She's flying down to meet him." Sarah paused. "We also found evidence of 2 other victims, other executives Richard sabotaged or surveilled over the past 3 years. They're cooperating with the investigation." So, it's over. Really over. The criminal case is just beginning. But your part, the running and hiding and fear, that's done. Richard Cross will never hurt you or anyone else again. Victoria hung up and walked into the service bay where Jake was teaching Emma how to diagnose a transmission problem. They both looked up when she entered, questions written across their faces. "It's over. Richard's in custody, David's alive, and there are other victims willing to testify. The FBI says I'm safe." Emma cheered. Jake's shoulders dropped like he'd been carrying weight for days and could finally set it down. He crossed to Victoria, pulled her into his arms, and held her without words, because words weren't necessary. They'd survived. Together. That evening, Victoria returned to her penthouse for the first time since the kidnapping. The space felt different, smaller somehow, lonelier. She stood at her windows looking at the city spread below and realized something fundamental had shifted. This view, this apartment, this life of perfect isolation didn't feel like success anymore. It felt like a prison she'd built herself. Her phone rang. "Jake. Hey, just checking that you're okay. Em wanted me to make sure you got home safe." "I'm okay. Tired. Thinking too much." "About what?" "About whether I want to go back to being CEO, to running Blackwell Automotive, to 70-hour weeks and board meetings and living alone 43 floors above the world." Jake was quiet for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want to feel like I felt at your shop, working on real problems with real consequences, teaching Emma about electrical systems, eating diner pancakes at 4 a.m. She laughed softly. "I want to be someone other than the ice queen in the corner office." "So be that person. Nothing's stopping you. Except 15 years of expectations and a company that needs leadership and a father's ghost judging every decision I make. Victoria, your father's dead. You don't owe him anything. You don't owe the company anything beyond what you choose to give. And if you choose to walk away..." He paused. "You're allowed to choose yourself." The words hit like a key turning in a lock Victoria hadn't known existed. You're allowed to choose yourself. When had she last done that? When had she last made a decision based on what she wanted instead of what she should want? What if I choose wrong? What if I give up everything I built and regret it? Then you'll build something new. That's what you do, Victoria. You build things. Companies, relationships, a life worth living. You just forgot somewhere along the way that you get to decide what that looks like. They talked until midnight about choices and futures and the strange way tragedy could sometimes crack you open enough to let better things in. When they finally hung up, Victoria stood at her windows again, but this time she wasn't looking at the city spread below. She was looking at her reflection in the glass, trying to recognize the woman who'd survived Richard Cross and federal investigations, and her own stubborn refusal to need anyone. She saw her mother's determination in the set of her jaw, her father's strategic mind in her eyes. But she also saw something new: vulnerability that wasn't weakness, connections that weren't burdens, the radical idea that strength could include asking for help. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency board meeting. The 12 members assembled with concern written across their faces, probably expecting another crisis, another battle. Instead, Victoria stood at the head of the conference table and delivered the speech she'd been rehearsing all night. "I'm stepping down as CEO effective in 3 months. I'll stay on as board chair, continue providing strategic guidance, but day-to-day operations need fresh leadership. Someone who wants this job for the right reasons, not because a ghost told them they had to." She looked around the table. "My father built Blackwell Automotive from nothing. I kept it alive after he died. But I don't want to spend the rest of my life maintaining someone else's legacy. I want to build my own." The board erupted in protests and questions. Marcus Fielding raised his hands for quiet. "Victoria, this is sudden. Are you sure this is what you want, after everything you've been through?" "I'm sure, maybe more sure than I've been about anything in 15 years, she smiled. "I'm not abandoning the company. I'm choosing to lead differently, to have balance, to be human instead of a machine, and maybe that makes me a better leader, not worse." The vote was unanimous. Victoria Blackwell would transition to board chair, a new CEO would be recruited, and 3 months from now she'd be free to choose what came next, without the weight of expectations crushing her. She walked out of that boardroom, feeling lighter than air, pulled out her phone and texted Jake. "I quit, well, mostly quit. Want to celebrate?" His response came immediately. "Emma's science fair is tonight. Come to that. Best celebration there is." Victoria arrived at Emma's elementary school at 6 p.m., wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual armor. The gymnasium was packed with parents and projects, and she found Jake and Emma near the back next to a display about electromagnetic fields that involved more magnets than seemed structurally safe. "You came," Emma threw her arms around Victoria. "And you're wearing normal clothes. Dad said you probably only owned fancy suits." "I own 3 pairs of jeans now. Bought them yesterday." "That's progress. Come look at my project. I'm going to win first place." Emma's confidence was justified. Her project was brilliant, clear, comprehensive, explained at a level that made sense without being condescending. Victoria stood back while Emma fielded questions from judges watching this remarkable child who'd somehow become essential to her life in less than 2 weeks. Jake appeared at her elbow. "She's something else, isn't she?" "She really is. She gets that from you." "From her mom, mostly. Sarah was brilliant, like that, could explain rocket science to a 5-year-old and make it sound simple." He smiled, sad but genuine. "She would have liked you, Victoria. Would have said you were the kind of woman who just needed someone to remind her she was allowed to be happy." "Am I allowed to be happy?" "Everyone is. You just have to stop thinking you need permission." Jake turned to face her fully. "Victoria, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond." Her heart started hammering. "Okay." "These past 2 weeks have been insane. Car sabotage, kidnapping, federal investigations, not exactly the normal way relationships develop. And I've told myself, we're just friends, that you're going through crisis and I'm helping, and it doesn't mean anything." He paused. "But I'd be lying if I said I didn't care about you. Really care. In a way that has nothing to do with car repair or corporate conspiracies." Victoria couldn't breathe. "Jake, let me finish. I know you're dealing with a lot. I know you're rebuilding your whole life. I know you don't need complications, but I also know that life's too short to not tell people how you feel when you feel it. So I'm telling you I care about you, Victoria. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to take you on an actual date. Somewhere nice. Somewhere that isn't a diner or a parking garage or the FBI field office." Emma's voice interrupted before Victoria could respond. "Dad, the judges are coming back. I think I won." They turned to see the judges conferring, marking clipboards. Emma bounced on her toes, vibrating with anticipation. When the head judge announced first place in the 5th grade category for Emma Morrison's electromagnetic field project, Victoria cheered as loudly as Jake, her heart full of something she couldn't name but didn't want to lose. Later, after Emma had accepted her ribbon and posed for photos and explained her project to anyone who would listen after other parents had congratulated Jake, and Victoria had been introduced as Dad's friend who's a CEO, but not scary, after the gymnasium had emptied, and they walked to the parking lot under stars that actually showed through Seattle's clouds, Victoria finally answered Jake's question. Yes. Yes what? Yes to the date. Yes to seeing where this goes. Yes to choosing something for myself instead of what I think I should choose. She stopped walking, faced him fully. Jake Morrison, I care about you too. Probably more than I should after 2 weeks. Definitely more than is rational or safe or smart. But I'm done being rational. I'm done with safe. I want to see what happens when I let myself feel something. Jake smiled that quiet smile that transformed his whole face. Fair warning, dating a mechanic with a 10-year-old isn't glamorous. It involves a lot of school pickups, science fairs, and diner pancakes. Sounds perfect. Also, I'm terrible at fancy restaurants. I will absolutely use the wrong fork. Then we'll skip fancy restaurants. And Emma comes with me. We're a package deal. I wouldn't have it any other way. Jake reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. In the parking lot of an elementary school surrounded by minivans and the lingering excitement of a science fair, Victoria Blackwell kissed a mechanic who'd saved her life in more ways than one and felt like she'd finally found something worth more than any corner office or company title could ever be. Emma, watching from Jake's truck, made gagging noises, but couldn't hide her grin. 3 months later, Victoria officially transitioned to board chair, attended her last day as CEO, and walked out of Blackwell Automotive at 3 p.m. instead of midnight. She drove straight to Morrison's Auto Repair, where Jake was teaching an after-school program for kids interested in mechanics. She watched him explain engine systems to teenagers who hung on every word, saw him encourage a girl who couldn't figure out why her circuit wouldn't complete, witnessed him doing exactly what he was meant to do. When the class ended, when the students filtered out with grease-stained hands and newfound knowledge, Jake looked up and saw Victoria leaning against the doorframe. You're early. I'm free. Completely, totally free for the first time in 15 years. She walked into the shop. What do you do with freedom, Jake Morrison? Spend it with people who matter. He pulled her close, kissed her properly. Welcome to the rest of your life, Victoria Blackwell. I think I'm going to like it here. She did. She really did.